So we began a new series, the challenges, the struggles, and the trials of the 21st century. There are quite a few topics that we will be discussing in the following weeks. Tonight is about unfulfilled expectations in marriage. And even though this topic does cover other areas in life, at work and so forth, we're going to concentrate a little bit more on marriage tonight. And because marriage is such an important topic, I do highly recommend that one should also listen to another lecture we gave a few years ago about how to stay married. Somehow people know how to get married. That's the easy part. Staying married is another story. And in that lecture, of course, there's a lot of good advice and tips on how to improve the relationship. Every relationship has great potential, but we must invest, we must make efforts. It does not always just happen by itself that two people grow together. So that is an important topic where the focus is on staying together. Now the focus is a little bit more on some issues that are more prevalent in the 21st century than they were in the past. And that is expectations. People are very disappointed, people are frustrated. People are very unhappy these days in their marriage and elsewhere in life about many things. But a lot of it has to do with certain expectations that they have. So I think this is a good topic. It's an important topic that needs to be discussed at length. When people have expectations and they don't get what they were expecting, this causes them a tremendous amount of disappointment and frustration. And if we're talking about marriage, it could be a potentially good marriage, a couple that is really right for each other. Nonetheless, at some point, it could be early, it could be later, the marriage is shaken up. And it's shaken up usually by unfulfilled expectations, many, many times. This is what happens. It somehow contributes to weakening the connection, an otherwise good connection between the couple. Perhaps a good way to start understanding the problem is with a famous proverb saying, "The man is his own worst enemy." You've heard of that, right? Mm-hmm. What does that really mean? Man is his own worst enemy. What usually happens in life is that many times we make mistakes. We get into trouble of some sort, and we like or we prefer to blame it on others. And in reality, we are the ones to blame. We just don't see it always like that. So when we say man is his own worst enemy, is that he could have had a good life, he could have had a normal life, had he not taken things to heart, had he not been so upset at the world, at his partner. Why are you upset? Perhaps there's something that you're doing wrong, not the other person who you're accusing or blaming for all your ills. So when we say man is his own worst enemy, it tells us a lot. It tells us that man is capable. Man is capable, unfortunately, of bringing a tremendous amount of misery to himself and to others around him. So unfulfilled expectations, in reality, as you will see, is something that is being perceived by an individual. It's not necessarily something so real. I'm not minimizing those things that everyone is entitled to expect. We're not minimizing those things, and that is a completely different talk. There are very problematic relationships that require a tremendous amount of help, professional help, and we don't have the time to go into that right now. What I want to really concentrate on is in an otherwise good relationship, but because of what people have in their mind, because of these unrealistic, if we can use that word, expectation, they get themselves into unnecessary trouble. Really, totally unnecessary. As we explained last time about depression, many, many times it's just in the mind. I mean, it's not real. It's perceived. It's something that we can easily conquer, easily overcome. It depends on us. It depends on attitude. It depends on perspective. In marriage itself, in the relationship that we call marriage, what we find is that this is totally different than adversity. Remember we spoke about adversity? adversity is something that we lack control over. Marriage, the way it functions is that pretty much we have tremendous amount of control. And we need to make that very clear from the very beginning. Marriage, the relationship, friendship, any type of relationship, partnership, a lot depends on us, on our free will, on how we act. We do have tremendous amount of control and say on whether this relationship will be successful or a failure. So it's not like, well, that's the mazal. That was my fate. No, 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 no. This is not adversity. This is something that we do have a lot more control. In other words, on how we conduct ourselves and whether this will be a successful relationship or not. But what happens in life to good couples is they don't realize, but out of nowhere, there's ups and downs. Those ups and downs are not in our control. That's true. Ups and downs. Things that we did not expect. Totally out of nowhere. All kinds of pressures. All kinds of things that happen that we were not expecting them. And the best way to look at it is imagine yourself for the first time on a roller coaster, or as we call it in Spanish, montaña rusa. You know, for those who get on it for the first time, especially the very quick ones, it could be scary. But in reality, is there any reason to fear? Assuming it was built well, it is safe. Hold on tight. That's all. Hold on tight. And if you hold on tight, stay calm, God willing, you'll get to the finish line. You'll make it. Life can be a roller coaster. For some people, it is a roller coaster. There are ups and downs in life. And those ups and downs, we don't have control. But how we relate to them, how we react, how do we deal with them, how do we understand them, that of course depends on us. But if you hold on tight and you don't do the wrong things, you're going to make it to the finish line. No reason to worry. And that brings us back to what I was saying before. It's so sad. It's really so sad to see so many young couples. There are older couples that have been together for a long time deciding after 40 years that they've had it. So there are older couples getting divorced too. But what's really sad is to see young couples who had the potential. They were right for each other. Fine people. Somehow not knowing how to hold on. What to do about the problems that arise. So we need to understand why this is happening. Why are they getting divorced? And in general, why are people less happy than they were in the past? People were much more content in the past, even with less. Today they have a lot more than the past, and still they're not happy. The answer to all these questions is really the same, but this is the simple answer. We're still going to analyze the problem a little bit more deeply. But on a simplistic level, the simple answer why people are less happy today and why there's more issues that couples face than in the past is because the Yetzer Hara in the 21st century, the evil inclination of the 21st century is a lot more powerful than it was in the past. There's so much that the eyes behold these days. There's so much going on between flying all over the world, between having your own car or yacht, perhaps. So much materialism, so much action going on with all the gadgets, with technology. It's incredible. The pace of life today is so fast that we really can't keep up. There's a tremendous amount of pressures that is not man-made. In other words, we did not make it per se. They are there. But we're living in this generation, we're living in the world at a time that so much is going on. And when I say so much is going on, I don't mean necessarily good things. There's a lot of not good things going on. And perhaps just to be a little bit more tactful, I'll just call it a lot of immorality. People are very loose these days. And it's not just the people, it's the media and other forms of communication the press, newspapers and the internet. So people are absorbing, people are being exposed to all kinds of things that bring pleasure, things that are meant to, or at least they claim that they will make you happy. And you will feel so good when you just try this or do that, that people, we're all human, and have this inclination who desires these things. And when you tempt it, and you provoke it, most human beings are going to go for it. And what if they can't afford it? You see where the problems begin right now? They want it, they can't afford it, they may steal, they may do all kinds of things and be unhappy. He has it, why don't I have it? It leads to tremendous amount of competition and problems between brothers and sisters about an inheritance. Money, so much of it. And who makes it worse? The lawyers themselves, who want to continue the fight. What is this about? It's about money. Money and power. Because money can buy you a lot of happiness. That's what they say, no? And it's totally false. It's not true. It's make-believe. But look how many people are getting sick from this. So what is the cause here? What's leading people on to this more than the past? The simple answer, the simple explanation is a more powerful evil inclination in this generation that is emerging. As we're speaking, this is a very powerful urge that people have that is causing them to want things that they did not need in the past, and they really don't need them. But the human being desires certain things, right, that bring him pleasure. Many of these expectations that we are learning to have or to expect are really unrealistic. Many expectations are unrealistic, and a lot of those expectations in marriage are very unrealistic because no human being is perfect. No husband is an angel, a perfect person with no faults at all. No woman is perfect 100%. We all have our faults and we have our weaknesses. So many times in a marriage, what you're dealing with is unrealistic expectations, which is also part of the problem. So this evil inclination that is trying to get its hands on all kinds of things has many expectations, many demands, and if he does not get his hands on them, if he does not succeed to get his hands on these unrealistic expectations, things that he thinks will make him happy, he's going to become very frustrated. Frustration sets in. So the first consequence of not getting what you want is frustration, disappointment. Okay, what's wrong with that? That by itself is not the end of the world. What people don't realize is what disappointment or frustration leads to. It's a chain reaction. If it's left untreated, if people did not get what they wanted, they're very unhappy and frustrated. That frustration, if left untreated, will lead to resentment. You know what resentment is? It's terrible. To harbor resentment towards your husband, towards your wife, that is already a red light, a red flag, whatever you want to call it. That's dangerous. Resentment? Because the next step after resentment is a complete loss of trust, which is the most important building block in a relationship. And if the trust is gone, the marriage is finished. And that is exactly what happens with partners. They started off, right? They grew up together. They were friends for many years. What happened? Why did they split after a number of years? They were doing well. The business was fine. The two of them were not lazy. They were working hard. I mean, there was no real problem in their personality per se. There could be all kinds of issues that contributed to them splitting. But many times what happens is that at some point, the trust was lost between them. But once that happens, it's finished. When there's no trust, forget about it. I can assure you that if people would not be very deeply disappointed about something, they would not rush to get divorced. The majority of divorces today, there must have been some sort of disappointment that they took very, very deeply. You know, that they attribute this to this disappointment tremendous importance in their life. Like who knows what happened? I'm so disappointed. I'm so frustrated. Like I didn't get my dream man like I really thought I would. If it wouldn't therefore be for this initial step of deep disappointment and frustration, no couple would rush to get a divorce. If there's a divorce, it happened because, of course, at stage one, there was some sort of disappointment, frustration, which led to perhaps resentment and loss of trust. All right, this is pretty much just trying to define the problem, what's going on these days, why it's different than it was in the past. But we need to understand this a little bit on a deeper level in order to know how to treat it, how to go about resolving this problem. And for that, we need to turn to the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah says that the human being is born with the ratzon, with the will to receive. That is how he's created. He's born with wants and desires. Why is he born like that? Because that's part of his survival. In order to survive, man has to have certain needs and wants: to eat, to sleep, to want to get ahead in life. Right? Otherwise, he would not survive. So the yetzer of Kibul, or yetzer of Kabbalah, in other words, to want to accept, lekabel, to receive, is important, but that's not it. Man makes the mistake in thinking that he's come into this world just to grab what he can for himself. Whereas his real mission, the more elevated mission, because there are various missions that we have to accomplish, but the more elevated mission, the ultimate mission, is to do what? Is to transform himself into a giver, not a taker, not a receiver. Man has to learn to be a giver, not a taker. Part of the frustration, therefore, happens to people only because they're continuing to be receivers and not givers. If one has only the mindset of, I want things for myself, I only want to receive, I want to get my hands on something, and they don't think for a moment on giving, on sharing, on helping others, frustration will set in very, very fast. If a person would develop the midah, the characteristic of giving, I can assure you that he will have less demands of others, less expectations of others, and he will be less frustrated and disappointed. This midah, this beautiful midah, this beautiful characteristic of giving to others is not only a help to the other individual, it's a help for ourselves. When Hashem, God, gave us the commandments, it's not just that we should do certain things for others. When we perform certain mitzvot, certain commandments, we're actually doing something for ourselves. This benefits us. Hashem says, I gave this for your own benefit. This will refine you. This will elevate you. This will sanctify you. This will transform you. You'll become better people. So it's not that Hashem says, I want you to do this for me. He doesn't need anything. This is for us. And I'm not even talking about the reward in the world to come right now. We're talking about life. Don't you want to have a good life, an easy life? Do the right things. Train yourself to be a giver, because that's the goal for what you've been created, to give. You will not only be benefiting others, you will be benefiting yourself. And so long as you're only a taker, a receiver, you're going to have many reasons to be upset at others. Many times that you will be frustrated when you didn't receive or get what you wanted or expected to receive. It's interesting that if you look at the root of the word ahava in Hebrew, Lashon HaKodesh, the root of the word love, ahava, tells you a lot of what pure love is. What is pure love? Have. Ahava from the root word have, give. Love doesn't mean for yourself. Love is not passion. Love is to give. When you care about somebody, you love them. You connect with them by giving them. Just like you shake somebody's hand, you're connecting with him on a very, very superficial level. A hug is another form of connection. A kiss is another form of connection. There's different ways to connect. You give a gift. To care about someone, to do for them, that's the ultimate act of love. That's what love is. It's not that you want it for yourself. People fall in love. What does that mean? That's not pure love. That's passion, right? They're physically attracted to someone. They like something about someone, the money maybe, but it's not pure love. Pure love is not easy because it requires that we do something for someone else, not that we get something for ourselves. So we already are beginning to see where the problem lies and why people are so upset and so frustrated is because they haven't advanced too much from being a receiver, a taker, to a giver. I find it very interesting that a lot of people have gone to marriage counselors and the like. And there's some very good marriage counselors out there, professionals who have experience, who have helped a lot of people. But unfortunately, what are we to say about the ones who were not helped? Not that the counselor did not try, but the people who went for help somehow were not helped. What happened? What exactly? I'm talking about when the two agreed to go get help. Why didn't it work? They were told what to do. They were given good advice, hopefully, assuming that it was the right advice. Then what went wrong? You know what the counselors cannot do? They cannot teach you how to love. They can give you tips. They can give you good advice. And there are some very good advice out there and tips that can be helpful in life. But what did we say the goal was? If you want to become a better person, you want to elevate yourself, you want to be able to gain self-control and not be as frustrated and not be so dependent on all kinds of things out there these days, but to be a lot more content with less, develop the midah, the characteristic of giving, and you won't think so much about what you want. Because a lot of those things that people want are not really needs. There's nothing wrong with having a need. We need to eat, we need to sleep, we need to drive around, but you don't have to have the most fanciest car, right, to get around. You don't need to sleep 10 hours a day. You don't need to overeat, right? Everything with the right measure. When people exaggerate, what's letting them exaggerate? That evil inclination that they cannot control. Or I should say they chose not to control. They can't control. And these counselors, the most they can do is they can train us. What's the difference between training an animal and taming an animal? Let's say you have a tiger. Can you train it? Of course. They've done so in circuses. They have done so successfully. They've trained tigers, they've trained bears, they've trained lions, wild animals. Did they tame them? No. How many stories or how many times have you heard of a bear killing his trainer, devoted trainer? It happened many times, with tigers as well. These are wild animals, they're unpredictable. Be careful with them. Can you train them? Yes, but you cannot tame their wild nature. A human being is a half animal, but he can be tamed. He can be. You can train him, but you can also be tamed. But taming requires a lot of work. Taming requires refinement of character. It requires one to work on his nature, on his character. It requires for one to strengthen his emunah, his faith in God. So his outlook is different about life. When man's outlook changes, when his character is under control and refined, he's tamed. But if you just give him advice, you're training him. Oh, next time your wife makes you dinner, tell her thank you. That's very nice. Compliments are very important. But did that change the man? No. Will that last forever? Not necessarily. Will that make a big difference? Not really. Will it make any difference? Yes, a little bit. All of these tips and advice are useful, but they will not change the individual. Now, man cannot really change completely. Basically, he acquires new habits. He restrains himself. What really changes is his attitude and his outlook. And that's what matters. If his outlook changes about life, his focus will be different. His priorities will be different. So his reactions will also be affected. How he deals with people, how he deals with his spouse, with his kids, with his neighbors. So therefore, the counselors can do so much, but you have to want to succeed in life. If people resolve underneath the chuppah when they're getting married, we're going to succeed no matter what life is going to bring us. And life is going to bring many challenges. They're going to challenge us, like that roller coaster. But we made up our mind when we got married. We decided we're going to succeed. Oh, you made such a decision? Then you're going to hold on tight, or hopefully you'll get to the finish line. People have to make such a decision. I want to succeed. I want my marriage to succeed. I don't want it, God forbid, to fail. But I'm aware there are things out there that can cause it to fail, God forbid. We're not going to let it happen. So here we have a certain awareness of the dangers that lie out there, all kinds of dangers, ready to lure us, to bait us. And these traps are dangerous. So one has to be aware of what's out there these days, much more than it was 100 years ago. Our grandparents did not have all the temptations that there are out there today. They therefore did not have all the challenges. Today, as I said, the evil inclination is so powerful. It's a real battle. And when that evil inclination comes into the home, by way of television, internet, dirty magazines, what do we expect? I mean, from the kids, God forbid, what can happen to them if they're influenced and absorb this? It's a real struggle when one is fighting his evil inclination. So we need to remember and focus on giving, on becoming givers and not just takers. But as I said before, this is the goal. You can't tell somebody to just be that way. It requires tremendous amount of work to change his attitude and his outlook in life. If an individual does change his outlook, if he does strengthen his faith, if he does work on his character, there's no doubt that everything else will follow. Everything else, I mean all the expectations that he would otherwise have had will not be looked at, will not be considered. Because he figures there's more important things in life that I need to worry about. I believe very, very much that you can tell, if any human being can tell, if he has really matured, if he's really gotten ahead in life, if he's really become a better person, if he looks at himself, he asks himself after a year or so, wait a minute, am I still angry or as angry as in the past, as upset, as frustrated for the same things? If it's true that he still is, then obviously he's not matured, he's not changed. It's very easy. But if he finds himself that after a number of years, he doesn't take to heart anymore what used to bother him in the past. He's calmer. He has more self-control. He takes it easy. Doesn't care about the same things that he cared about in the past. He reacts positively, has more self-control. He loves people more than he did in the past. He's more of a giver. These are all indicators that he's gotten ahead, that he's matured, that he has grown spiritually. So this is still a general description of the problem and what needs to be done to resolve it. What will very much help us is if we focus on becoming givers instead of takers. But now we need to go a little bit to the more practical tips and advice on a day-to-day basis that can hopefully preserve the relationship intact. Number one, it's very important to make the following distinction. If one of the couple, the husband or the wife, does not provide something that is expected of him, is it because he doesn't want to or he doesn't know how to? This distinction is important. Again, we're going to tackle the problem, we're going to look into it a little bit and search for ways to resolve the problems. Number one, make this distinction. Are you dealing with a husband who does not know how to or does not want to? It's obvious, I think, to all of you that there's a big difference, right? With one, there's a chance. With the other one, there may not be a chance. Point number two, as we approach this problem, in wanting to deal with it properly, we have to recall at all times that marriage is not necessarily going to cure all our problems. A lot of people, when they get married, they have this fantasy that marriage is going to make them happy for the rest of their life. No, not necessarily. Why not? Because happiness is something internal. Happiness is something spiritual. You have to be happy yourself. You can't expect that others will make you happy. That does not happen. I mean, obviously we want others to make us happy too, in the way they act, the way they behave. But true happiness is something spiritual and it's something internal. We have to develop it. So marriage, hopefully, will be a big help to us in many ways. But it's not necessarily going to be the cure to all the ills. It's not a secret formula that this will take care of everything. A lot depends on us internally. What's going on in our life internally? And you know, a lot of people come into the marriage with baggage from their youth, from their upbringing in their homes, which is a separate problem. But that's internal too. Got to deal with that. Point number three, don't expect people to change. That's a real big expectation. People don't really change. Few people are willing to really work on themselves, refine their character, and look at life from a different perspective. You know, if they do so, if they change their outlook, then they can become, of course, people who we have an easier time getting along with than otherwise. Yes, that can happen. Otherwise, for people to change the nature is very difficult. So what should we do instead? It is preferable, it's more advisable for an individual who's been upset and frustrated to fill their life with content. Content. In other words, do something that will make you happy. Make your life meaningful. Emphasize less materialism. Look less at what the neighbor has. Don't care what people say so much. A lot of people have a problem with what everybody's telling them to do, or with what the neighbor has that they would also like to have. Concentrate less on what the other has and what the other one says. Always aspire to elevate yourself. Very important point. A person has to continuously aspire to become a better person. And even if you do not get to the point that you were aspiring to, don't feel bad, because our job is only to try our best and to do, to act, not necessarily to accomplish a lot. How much we will end up accomplishing doesn't depend on us. What does depend on us is the willingness. Are you willing to try? Are you willing to do something? Yes. How much? You don't know. So therefore, don't be disappointed. If you didn't do as much as you would have wanted to, at least you did something. And do not forget that life is about giving, not just about taking. So these are some ideas that can help us focus properly and approach the problem in a positive way that will, God willing, will be helpful. Some tips perhaps on how to improve the relationship, even though I've left that for the other lecture. In the other lecture about marriage, there's quite a few tips. I think we should include some here too, because by doing the right things, as I said before, if we do the positive thing, the right thing, this can help not only the marriage itself, this can help us as human beings. So it's important to do right things, to do the positive thing. One of the things that needs to be improved, that could really use a lot of attention, is communication. The area of communication is perhaps the most important area that needs improvement in just about every relationship. The reason for that is because you could imagine what bad communication will do. Poor communication leads very easily to misunderstandings. And many times when there's no communication at all, one may think that the other one is totally unresponsive. It appears to us like that because there's no communication. Why don't you talk to them? Why don't you find out? Why don't you ask them in a nice way? So a lot of it is being perceived. There's no communication, so we perceive it. We think, it appears to us that this man is unresponsive. Communication, therefore, needs to be improved. How do you go about improving communication? When you do talk, make sure that it's at the right time. Make sure that the atmosphere is calm. Make sure that your tone is respectful. And this tone respectful, believe me, is one of the most important ones. A lot of people attack, yell, complain. The communication is there, they're talking. But it doesn't get to the target. It doesn't hit the target. It's not effective. On the contrary, it can make things worse. You're going to communicate. This is a powerful tool. When things are calm, quietly, respectfully, and when you do talk, don't blame or accuse the other individual. Why didn't you do this? Let them know, inform them what's important to you. This is also a very important tip, and it's really common sense. Instead of telling them, you know what, I'm so unhappy, I'm so upset, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. Instead of complaining about what you didn't get, tell the other side, the husband or the wife, this is so important to me. I wish we can do it this way. So you're not blaming, you're not laying the blame, you're not expecting, you're presenting it a lot better. Let's say somebody's not reacting, somebody's not doing anything, and you're expecting that he should do something, buy you a gift, I don't know, or a card, or just do something that you feel he should be doing it. Just because he doesn't do it doesn't mean he's not sensitive. Maybe he doesn't know how to express it. Maybe he has another way of expressing it. Again, people make this mistake of assuming certain things when it's not true. And had there been communication, they would have been able to resolve this. They would have been able to overcome this misconception. And by the way, you can't expect a man to know everything, or a woman. As it is, they have so many differences. Right? Man and women are very different. They speak a different language. They have a different mentality. As it is, they're very different. You can't expect that the other one should know what to do all the time to do the right thing. Again, communication. This is important to me. And you have to forgive me. I mean, I'm talking to the women now. I still don't understand after 30 years of marriage why a woman has to have so many pairs of shoes. That's because I'm a man. I'm not expected to know. Because for me, 2 pairs are enough. So I'm not expected to know. But it would help if the wife would explain to the husband why it's so important for a woman to have so many pairs of shoes. It would help. You know, the nature of a woman is such that she wants to look good to her husband, of course, not to other people. And that's so important to her, that she just wants to have the best, right? She wants to keep up with new shoes, new dresses. I don't know, some explanation that will satisfy him. And by the way, this is not just a fantasy. There's some truth to this. I mean, God created them this way. Just like God created men in a certain way, they have certain needs, certain mindset. The women too. So that in itself is not wrong or bad. That's just the way human beings are. That's the way women are, that's the way men are. And they have to somehow understand this from day one, that they're different and they're going to be dealing with situations differently. And the rabbis, therefore, have provided us with tremendous amount of guidance and advice on how not to be upset because of that. In other words, to expect these differences, that they're okay, they're healthy actually. If a woman does not want to look nice, that's a problem. Because that's not normal, right? So you should be happy that she's a normal woman, that she's behaving in a healthy, normal way. But even that sometimes gets carried away, you know, with hundreds of pairs of shoes, expensive shoes. I mean, obviously some people have weaknesses. Everything with moderation. So in order for people to have a better relationship and a better communication, it would help them so much if they read about it before they got married and even into their marriage, that they get the proper guidance on how to understand the differences between the two. So don't expect the man to know everything. If he has questions or problems or issues with you, the woman, in other words, how should he know? I mean, you might be more sensitive than he is. It does not mean that if he does not buy you something that he doesn't love you, that he doesn't care about you. Maybe he has to be told, listen, it's important that you do this on your anniversary, on the birthday. Maybe he wasn't trained that way. Maybe he didn't see it in his home. So don't expect certain things, because how should he know everything? And if the communication is good and you explain it properly, you know what? There's a chance he'll listen. And he'll actually give you what you want. So why don't you try? Explain it to him instead of anticipating or expecting it from him to come on its own. Another enhancer of good communication is to be a good listener. Listen to the other side. Now, why is that so important to listen? Oh, there's a lot of benefits. First of all, when you listen, you get to know the person a lot better. Did you ever notice once when you're walking down the street as opposed to driving down the street, you see more of the homes? You're walking down the streets. Instead of driving, you always drive it. This time you walked. Wow, I never noticed all these things. Because you're walking, you're able to see better. When you listen to someone, you get to know them better than if you're doing most of the talking. Plus, when you listen, it shows that you care about them. You want to hear what they have to say. So there's a lot of benefits to being a good listener. One of the areas that we don't have really that much time to get into, but it's a real problematic area in relationships, is intimacy. The lack of intimacy. All I will say now about intimacy is that if the intimacy is suffering between a husband and wife, it's really indicative that there was some trouble in some other area that was left untreated, that carried itself to the intimacy. It's not that the problems begin with the intimacy. Usually, the problems begin elsewhere, and if left untreated, it affects the intimacy too. And if the intimacy is not good, obviously you're going to have a lot of unhappy people. In other words, husband and wife can really lose, I guess, love for each other if that area is not good. When I use the word intimacy, I don't only mean physical intimacy. To be intimate also means to treat your spouse as your best friend, as somebody that you trust, somebody very close to you, that you care about them. It's not only physical intimacy. Intimacy is deep communication. You want to communicate with them on a deep level. You want to share with them your thoughts, your fears, whatever is possible to share. So some couples don't have a very strong, intimate relationship, not only physically, but in the communication between them, in the closeness, because obviously they had some issues elsewhere that were left untreated. And if there's problems elsewhere in the relationship, it could easily affect on how they look at each other or how much time they want to spend with each other. They're so frustrated perhaps that they're not excited about spending time with each other. So it's always indicative of a problem that began elsewhere that eventually extended itself to the area of intimacy. Okay, so now we have a couple who really, God willing, is going to try to do their best to have less expectations, to respect each other, to be good listeners, and to give to each other. Hopefully what we've covered so far is definitely going to help a couple that is serious about succeeding in life, succeeding in their relationship. However, it's not enough. I'm going to give you a little bit of a few tips that one always has to keep in mind that will also help in hopefully not bringing about too much disappointment and frustration in life. One thing is to work on the marriage, and that requires work in many areas. Another is making sure that we don't fall back on our old habits. So that's what I want to cover now for the last few minutes, is some tips on making sure that we don't have certain expectations, I guess we can call them. Having less expectations in general is always a good idea. Just have less expectations. Don't expect things from others. Appreciate the little that you have. Again, these are just tips that can further help us deal with any potential problem. Tips that are very valuable in life in general. Be happy with the little that you have. Make the best of what you have, with your situation. When you have realistic expectations, you actually gain more control over yourself. Not everybody is realistic. So try to be realistic about whatever expectations that you have. This will help with the self-control. Also, it's important to remember that if you have too many expectations, that leads, or that you're setting yourself up to disappointment. Learn to love yourself. A lot of people are upset, frustrated, they didn't get what they want. Don't you love yourself? I mean, there's so much for you to love, there's so much for you to be happy about. Develop some self-confidence. Why he's so dependent? I mean, when a person is frustrated, is obviously he was depending on something, and develop some self-confidence and less dependency. Pray to God that He should help you. These are tips that people can always benefit from in life in general, if they recall at all times that it's better just to live without too much expectations. Because otherwise, I can assure you, life will be full of disappointments otherwise. So it's better to do away with it. One of the mistakes people make is that they like the easy route, a shortcut to the problems. There really are no shortcuts. As we said in the very, very beginning, in order to succeed in any relationship, one has to work hard. One has to work on his character. One has to refine himself. No shortcuts. I very much advise young couples and even people who are married many years, take the time to learn. In your prayers, ask Hashem to guide you, to give you the strength to be able to confront all these potential problems in life. And all of us without any exception, will face from time to time challenges, and trials and struggles, all kinds, every one of us. So it's important to learn. Learn, pray, and ask for guidance and strength from God. Because it's not easy. I never said it was. But with the proper outlook, by learning, right, by praying, by applying some of these tips in marriage and elsewhere in life, we can definitely be ahead of the game and not fall back, God forbid, and feel that we failed somewhere. I want to finish with a cute story that I saw in one of the books that covers this topic as well. There was once a woman who was very, very frustrated because of unfulfilled expectations in her marriage. For 8 years, she was having a very, very difficult time in her marriage because of this problem. So what did she decide to do? She decided to write down all her expectations that she had from this marriage. And she actually began to fill up a whole folder, page after page, of expectations that she had. She wrote it all down. She took all the pages and stuffed it in a shoebox, took her husband by his hand, and they went to the backyard. They dug a big hole, and they held a funeral for this shoebox full of expectations, and they buried it. And after she did that, she says that for the next 25 years she's had a beautiful relationship, a beautiful marriage with her husband. She buried those expectations. She got rid of them. I think this is very, very special. I think this is not only the right thing to do, but this shows tremendous amount of courage on her part, that she actually decided to do something about it. She realized she wasn't going to get anywhere if she would continue with these expectations. She came to the point of realizing, but wait a minute, perhaps it's my fault. And it is, partially, it's her fault. It's in the head. Expectations. I wanted it to be romantic. I wanted it to be a bed of roses. You can want all day long, but who promised you, and whoever told you it will be? It's okay to want and to prefer if you can control yourself. If you don't get it, you're still happy. Oh, of course we should strive for it. It's up to you to make it a bed of roses. It's not going to happen by itself. It's not a one-way street. And it's not always the man's fault either. I said not always, sometimes it is. So don't think I'm favoring the men here in any way. No. Many times we all make mistakes. Mistakes happen. But be careful not to always blame the other side because you had certain expectations, because those expectations many times are unrealistic, totally unrealistic. And it's not his fault either, because perhaps he doesn't know, and perhaps you didn't communicate it to him, and perhaps you never sat down to discuss what really bothers you. And really he is sensitive, he does care about you, but he doesn't know how to express it the way you were raised. You see, misunderstandings. So many misunderstandings in life between husband and wife, between friends, between neighbors. What's road rage? Also some sort of misunderstanding. If people don't take the time to look into the problem, but it's not just the time, you have to really make a decision. You want to succeed. You really want to succeed, and you will do whatever it takes to succeed, including working on ourselves. If people do not really want to do some work on their refining their character and strengthening their faith with God, it's going to be more difficult, because one of the tricks, I don't want to call it a shortcut, but I'll call it a trick, a very powerful trick of really overcoming many problems in life, is a spiritual connection with God. We've been talking about that recently. I just don't want to overemphasize that point, because it's asking too much of a person to just connect with God and everything will be okay. It doesn't go like that. It doesn't work like that. We have to tackle these problems from various fronts, various angles, because the human being is half animal. And he needs to learn good habits. He needs to elevate himself. He needs to strive continuously, aspire to become a better person, to become a giver and not a taker. That is a big, big job. So we need to define the mission. We need to define the goal. And we have to have the will to get to the finish line. A roller coaster it will be, but hold on tight. And God willing, with the help of Hashem, of course, guiding us and giving us the strength, Bezat Hashem, we will succeed.
Amen. So cool.